There we go. So you guys, today we have the pleasure to have Stephen Kemp come and join us and talk to us about his career and his experience. He's also a set designer. This week we're doing set designers. Stephen, take it away. Go for it.
Well, hi everyone. It's so great to get to speak with you. I thought I'd start just showing an overview of just some of my work, just as a starting place. I do a lot of work in opera, theater, events, and particularly do a lot of 3D renderings. And so I end up doing animations and renderings for all kinds of different things. And I can kind of show you like how, the world of scenery can bleed into exhibit design and even doing renderings for, residential architecture projects, things like that. So yeah, I'm going to just share my screen. I'm just going to step you through a couple images real quick, and then I'll cap that off with a fun little video that we can watch just for a couple minutes here. So let me just switch over and share this screen.
Even, by the way, where are you? Just so that we know. Where do you live?
I'm in Kansas City. I was in I was in New York for 10 years and just moved here almost 2 years ago now. It's for my wife. So yeah. All right. So hold on. So I'm bringing up the Zoom options, sharing screen. Okay. Can everyone see this PDF with this logo?
So we don't see it. Let me see if I need to share with you. Share. Let me see. Oops. That doesn't help, does it? No.
That one's your desktop, it looks like.
Desktop, yep.
Let's see.
Maybe I need to, oh, there you go. Yeah.
Here we go. Does that work?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, great. Great. So, like I said, just there we go. It's a little delayed. All right. So I'm just going to step through these. So, these are several designs for opera: Madame Butterfly, Falstaff, Flying Dutchman. Many of these are at Opera San Jose. I work a lot in the Bay Area, and one of the connections here of getting to speak today is working a lot with Frederic Boulez. This is Anna Karenina. This was my first show with Opera San Jose. An opera of Cinderella written by the 9-year-old Alma Deutscher. This is a Don Giovanni at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music with Jose Maria that Frederic Boulez was our production manager on. So it's Romeo and Juliet, Streetcar Named Desire, Crucible, Gene Onegin. And so this is an example also of musicals. This is Oklahoma, and The Music Man, West Side Story. This is just a straight play of Ah Wilderness at Oslo Repertory Theater. So I do a lot of regional Lord Theater designs as well. This is Pasadena Playhouse, a new musical there called Shout Sister Shout a couple years back. This is the off-Broadway revival of Jonathan Larson's Tick, Tick, Boom that he wrote as the precursor before Rent. Another off-Broadway series of shows here, Marry Me a Little. Spring Awakening. This was a project that I actually did in grad school that we then did in Romania called The Physicists, Friedrich Dürrenmatt's play. And so, this one was just I'll speak about this later, but it's a great example of like those connections you make, because this was one of our directing faculty is the artistic director at the Hungarian Theater of Cluj. And so he brought this production over to Romania. This is the off-Broadway revival of Ordinary Days last year, A Man for All Seasons. This is a Norwegian cruise line circus, like kind of in the vein of Cirque du Soleil. So another kind of avenue that you might find yourself in, working on the cruise ships, but perhaps not so much at the moment. These are some renderings for Holland America as they christen the ships and the beginning of the send-off of them. This is some interesting projects of if anyone's done any sailing on cruise ships in China, this is a Norwegian Cruise Line ship that has a new laser tag whole battlefield on the top deck. And so we did 2 of these. This is a sci-fi version, and there's another one that's sort of this like Lost Atlantis idea. I'll show you in a minute. And these are some interiors of how that turned out. Some other just rendering projects for cruise ships. This is the other one I was speaking about. That's the Atlantis version that's on an even newer Norwegian Cruise Line ship. I do a lot of kids shows, kid musicals. This is PJ Masks. I did Baby Shark Live this last year. That's paused on tour at the moment. This is a concert rendering that I was doing for another designer. This is some event work. That's another shoot off and side project that that we can be in with scenic design. So these are all more events. This is an event for Canon in New York, and up front with Universal. Just showing some more other rendering projects. This is some exhibit work and architectural projects. So like I said, just a broad range of different things. And so now I just want to show you this quick minute video again to sort of start this conversation. That is sort of this kind of a sizzle reel of some renderings and animations that kind of show you a sampling of what I do in 3D and a key communication device that I use with directors and the whole team. So this has got sound with it, and it should share correctly. Oh, I've got to enter my password to allow that. All right. Okay. So are you all seeing the logo again with this?
Yes.
So that really shows. I'm sorry.
Bravo, bravo.
Oh, thank you. So that sort of shows a combo of different things of actual, you know, full scenic transitions constructed to sort of show a flow, and sometimes to time out automation cues, and then others just, you know, just a simple fly through of just spinning the camera around the set, and then others were just still renderings, as you saw in there, but just a mixture showing, you know, different ways that I use once I build a 3D model, how I can activate it and use it for further communication. So backing up, so I'm from Houston, Texas originally, and I loved making models as a kid. I would, you know, whenever I would go, we would go to museums a bunch, and yeah, I always loved those dioramas you would see when you went through, you know, different museums, and I would try and like recreate you know, things I had seen at, like at Gettysburg, or, you know, at your natural history museums and things, and, you know, paint figures, build, you know, aircraft and military models, all those things, all like what I was starting to realize I was most focused on was like the storytelling of it, you know, like it really creating these images frozen in time and kind of, you know, exploring these dramatic stories. And so as I started in junior high and high school, I found myself, you know, I loved my art classes. I've always done a lot of drawing and painting, and you know, I was finding that I was really drawn to theater. And so by the time I got to high school, I was acting in shows, and my teachers there kind of saw my interest on the drawing, the visual art side, and encouraged me to work with them on designing the scenery for our shows that we were doing, and designing the graphics for poster designs, and you know, some costume designs as well. I've never really gone too far into costume design, and so all of that like had me really excited about looking at, you know, as I was going deeper into to high school, looking at architecture programs, looking at graphic design programs, but I couldn't like shake theater. And in the long run, you know, I have a hard time not doing things 1,000%. And so I sort of switched my plan that I was going to be an architecture major with like a theater minor at the University of Texas, and I chose to go to a much smaller school that, you know, you couldn't classify as a conservatory, but it had at the time one of the 2 musical theater programs in Texas, at Sam Houston State University, just north of Houston. And so that sort of really brought a lot of students to that school, and you know, since the musical theater kids were there, it just upped the game for everyone else. So it had a strong design program, a lot of produced work, a lot of things going on, and so that I just decided, you know, I'm not totally sure what I want to do in theater, but I know I can't let it go. Like this is the thing that I just know I have to be a part of. And so I went to school there, and in one of my first classes, I had a very influential set design professor that had just graduated from Brandeis several years back as in their grad program, and at that time they had you know, many very famous designers working with them, Carl Agasty and Bob Moody, one of the most famous scenic painters of his day. And so he really inspired me, and kind of showed me that scenic design was a profession, and I could do that, and you know, that could be my career. And so that got me fully focused, you know, throwing all of my efforts into that. Which I then, through lots of opportunities there at school, I started looking at internship programs, and ended up at the Alley Theater there in Houston, the largest Lord Theater in Texas, and started working as a carpenter and as later as a draftsman for them while I was still in undergrad. And they actually asked me if there was any way after my third year in school, like, do I really need to go back to school? They were, it was a questionable situation really on their end. And luckily everyone played nicely together, and my professors sort of, saw that it was a great opportunity for me to keep working with them. And so they worked with me to sort of expedite the rest of my classes so that I could graduate early and continue to work with them. And so I had always loved the construction side of things. I love making things with my hands, as I said, the models. That was sort of my way in to all of this, and so it was something where I was really looking at the world of design and the world of technical direction, and trying to decide like which path I felt was really right for me. And because up to that point, you could get your hands in all of it, like that you are still fulfilled in all of those ways, you're still building the scenery. But I knew that I needed to sort of keep homing in on what I really wanted my specific career to be. And so that year, at the next year, the full year there, after I graduated, that I spent with the Alley, I was then working as the ATD left, and so I was sort of the unofficial ATD, working under the technical director, and he really took me under his wing and taught me AutoCAD, through the mind of a technical director, which really has served me well, for the rest of my career. And sort of, I loved all the work that I was doing there, but at the same time, I was realizing like how much I missed the design side of things, because I was doing some small designs as much as I could manage, as a recent college graduate, like working out of my garage at home, building sets for churches as big business there in Texas, and things like that, some small theaters, but nothing gigantic, right? And I was recognizing it would be, I saw at the Alley as a prime example, all the designers coming through there were from New York. It's something that I think actually has changed a little. The dynamic has changed a little bit, but there's a lot of the LORT theaters, the regional theaters across the nation. They still bring in the Broadway designers to design all of their shows. And so I made the choice that I wanted to pursue. I knew I wanted to continue with grad school one way or another, whether it was going to be in technical direction, like looking at Yale, or looking at, design programs and continuing that. And that's what I realized I had to stick with and pursue. And so I went to UC San Diego in La Jolla, and I chose them because they are connected to the La Jolla Playhouse. And many grad programs have that kind of situation. Yale, that I just mentioned, also has a similar scenario. They've got Yale Rep, another LORT theater, there on campus. And UCSD, it interested me because I also thought, like, well, exposure in California, maybe I could see what's going on with the film industry. I really hadn't had any exposure there. I'd be interested to see about that. And also the connection there with the Playhouse, and just all that experience you get to produce in their shop, in their theaters, and you get connected with designers that are doing productions at the Playhouse as their assistant. And that again, my schooling there, I loved my professors, and all of that sort of led to these connections with two designers that were working at the Playhouse, David Gallo and Robert Brill. And so I graduated UCSD and moved to New York because we were already, I was assisting on the production of Memphis that went on to Broadway several years later, that we were starting at the La Jolla Playhouse. And I had already done The Wiz with Robert Brill that was supposed to move to Broadway, which is a common theme. There's not that many theaters, and there's way too many shows that want to do a Broadway production. And so many of them just get left waiting in the wings, like that production. It starred Titus Burgess, if anyone loves Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. through those connections with Robert and Gallo, I was able to have, I was extremely lucky to already have these projects that I was working on moving to New York, and that I was working in their studios, as well as starting to try and develop my career through my connections with my colleagues from grad school, as well as people I was meeting in the industry through Gallo and Brill, and just being there in New York, and the being in the right place at the right time kind of scenarios, and getting into smaller productions that sort of lead to those larger productions. And so it was a great experience and great learning from two sort of polar opposite designers. If you were to look at, you saw several examples of their work in some of those designs you just saw. Robert is a wonderful minimalist, known for a lot of like truss exposed structures. He designed Cabaret, the revival that won many Tonys, and then that we revived again in 2014 on Broadway with Alan Cumming, and I was the associate designer on that. And Gallo, much more of a maximalist designer that did Memphis, and does a lot of over-the-top kid productions, kid musicals, and concerts. Does all the Fish concert designs, things of that nature. And so just two polar opposites, and I sort of was able to sort of hone an aesthetic, kind of pulling from both of those mentors, and sort of seeing what is what I was seeing as effective methods here and there, as I sort of then transitioned to my own career, where I was really focused on no longer assisting and being an associate designer and working on my projects. So I did 10 Broadway shows, those Cabaret in Memphis, as well as Jesus Christ Superstar. You saw some animations in there as well about that one. Tuck Everlasting, a lot of straight plays, Long Story Short that was directed by Jerry Seinfeld, which was really fun. He's exactly as he is in, that you see in a stand-up special. He literally burst into an office saying, "What is the deal with New York office bathrooms?" I mean, and he went on like a 3-minute tirade when we were supposed to be in a meeting. So, and so that got me on my track of doing a lot of off-Broadway theater, and sort of transitioned into the opera world through really one director and Opera San Jose there in the Bay Area. I was brought in when a designer wasn't meeting their deadlines, and they got fired. And this director and I were supposed to have done a show in Houston, and that had fallen through. And so he fought to bring me in. He went to bat for me, and the company said, "Sure. I mean, if you want to work with this person, let's do it. That sounds great." And I made a good connection there. I made a good impression. That was that Anna Karenina design early on that I just showed you, the adaptation of the Tolstoy book. And that company then started putting me, they brought me back, each season. I've worked with them for the last 10 seasons, and they've put me with many different directors that then I made a connection with, and then we started working in many different places. And I've worked at 29 different opera companies across the nation with all starting from Opera San Jose and the connections I made there. And so that's, kind of pivoting this to speaking about so how do you get work, which is obviously a very crucial component of all this, and a goal, looking down the line. There's a couple main key components, I would say. And I think one is the companies you work for, and making those impressions, and hoping that they will bring you back and keep you a part of the family. You've got directors that hopefully would be bringing you back to get the band back together. I feel like people are for the most part, my experience, I feel like they, as a collaborator, people are inherently loyal. They want to have a wonderful like if you had a good experience doing a project together, they frequently want to have that same excitement and energy and experience again. And it's a shorthand. It's easier to work with people you've already worked with, right? So once you start those experiences, I think frequently, directors want to have that same team in place. And so they would frequently ask a company, here is my team that I work with. I want to hire them. So that's the other main way in. And then another way, certainly, that you can get hired is just connections, getting recommended by someone else, a connection with a faculty member, a connection with another colleague. There's many different, the web, really grows, and you never know, you meet someone and maybe you don't get a project with them right away, but years down the line, you might get this phone call and you end up with a project with someone that, you had this meeting with. And I think, so how does any of that start? And I feel that, one thing I would certainly encourage is, never feel bashful about reaching out to people. There's all of us, are happy. Any designer, is always happy to talk to someone. And, I think that's a frequent thing that everyone encourages, that, look up look to what are your aspirations, and who is someone that has a career that excites you, and who is working in places that are the places that down the line 5-10 years, that's where you want to be, right? Find those people and reach out to them, or at the very least, like, follow their career, look back and see where they started, look at their resume and see what were the early places they were working. Because it's certainly there are stepping stones as you're working through the industry, for sure. And so it's sort of an interesting thing when you look to someone's resume and you start seeing common places that a lot of people start at. And different summer programs, of course, and looking to those summer festivals, obviously in theater, Williamstown Theater Festival, and Berkshire Theater Festival, Dorset. And also on the opera side, there's many companies that offer amazing internships, Santa Fe Opera and Des Moines Metro Opera, many large summer programs that are out there that are great beginning stepping stones, where you just are out there with a lot of people that you end up making potential connections that can get you in the door in other places. And I think another thing that I think is important as a young designer to sort of think about is also that eventually thinking about the idea of that you are your own business, and keeping that aspect as a part of we're all artists and we want to focus on that, but we also I think if you look at the most successful or long-lasting designers out there, there's a commonality that they are keeping their head also in the business side of things, and I think some of that, a lot of that is just your most basic organization, and something you might start that you would realize, like in a larger design firm as an architect or an interior designer, like all of that, there'd be a structure of you're tracking your hours, how much you're working on these different projects, which gives you a lot of data to think about as you're taking projects. And that, like, okay, if I take this small off Broadway show, or downtown show, as someone would say, like that you might be building and painting yourself, how much time is quantified in that project, like it's good to sort of know some of that parameters, or even like knowing how much it takes with a certain director. Maybe there's a certain director that you work with that you know that like, okay, I know that we spend a little bit longer on the design process working together than maybe director B over here. So director A, if I take this next project with them, I know that I need to block off a little bit more of my schedule. Just different data that I think that organization really helps. It's things that, you know, we all have to be proactive on, because our industry is a little more freewheeling, and there's not a lot of standards as you might find like truly in architecture and things of that nature. Just as a technical overview before we start talking, before I open it up to questions, I would just mention, I mentioned AutoCAD. I also draft in Vectorworks, but for the majority of my shows, I draft in AutoCAD. Most shops still draft in AutoCAD. All Broadway shops draft in AutoCAD. And I just find that being that we're drawing, yes, the lighting designer and the sound designer might be drawing in Vectorworks. For scenery, my opinion, I'm drawing for the shop and everyone else in a secondary fashion. And so since I'm drawing for the shop, I find, they are most pleased with that interaction. Vectorworks has gotten much better over the years. It used to be much more challenging to the interconnection between, exporting it to AutoCAD, but having that native file for the shop is great. Like just knowing that it hasn't gone through any other iterations. And so I model in AutoCAD most typically, and then I import it into 3ds Max, and I texture, I light, and I render in Max. I output individual frames if I'm doing an animation, and then I then gather those frames in After Effects and output a video that you just saw through After Effects. I think maybe that's a good moment to start opening it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, all this path. It's really interesting. Do you guys have any question for Steven? If you do, go ahead and ask them, Okay, I have one. I'll start. When you design, let's say an opera, do you start sketching or do you go straight into 3D modeling? Like where are you now with the, this new technology? What do you use?
Yeah, it's it's one of the things I love about the job, that sort of every project's different, right? That like, you never know what the, I try and see, what media might be best to communicate the idea. But most typically, what I do is, at this point, I do rough sketches on my iPad, actually, with the Apple Pencil. And I do that just because I can literally have it anywhere. And I'm usually not in a pandemic. I'm out of town about 100 days a year. And so, it's great not having to, the iPad is so easy. iPad and a pencil in your backpack, you're done. You don't have to be having the sketchbook and all the other things that necessarily go with it. So I usually am using that these days. It's also like, because I used to do vellum and layers and layers of drawings that I would then scan and put that into Photoshop. And well, wait a minute. I mean, Photoshop is layers inherently. Let's cut to the chase. And the iPad's gotten so good, because I would use the Wacom tablet for a while and those, but the iPad with the direct connection, I find it really great. And so I'll do those sketches. Sometimes they're just for me, like that I'm just working an idea out in my head. And then I very quickly will start blocking things out in Max, and we'll render out. And then I start kind of working back and forth a lot, because then I might block something out sort of as like a rough massing model, a white model. I'll render that out. and then I'll bring that into the iPad and start sketching back on top of it, you know, and keep going that way, and sort of keep finessing, and you know, and maybe that is the first thing I end up showing a director. That's sort of frequently the path. It keeps things a little looser, but it still has the accuracy. It's based in a reality that I'm not overpromising a technical, you know, issue that can't happen if I'm just, you know, just sketching fully freehand, you know? And so I'm still locked in that scale, which is great. If I'm sketching over, you know, even just some rough massing of something. So that's usually my flow. And then that starts very quickly getting perfected into a full textured model in Max. And sometimes it depends on the director, because frequently, you know, a collaborator I work with a lot, I go very quickly into that, and you know, we just start. You know, I just start. Jose Maria is a great example. You know, I rarely show him any early sketches, because we start talking, and you know, the ideas are flowing, and all of a sudden, like, I'm really like, I see exactly like what we're both talking about, and I want to start getting that out immediately. And I don't need to show I don't need to work out anything in my head. Like, I need to just get this fully, you know, I want to cut, I want to just get to the finessing part of it. And so sometimes that can be a little sped up in the process.
Cool. Do you guys have does anybody has any question?
I have a question.
Go for it, Raquel.
When you're exporting files and rendering, how do you avoid losing quality?
So like saving the just the render from the native from Max.
Yeah.
I usually do a TIFF or sometimes a PNG, which you know, theoretically is lossless, and also gives you the alpha channel, which is great if you're going to be layering things. And it's a slightly smaller file size, especially if you're doing an animation. So sometimes a PNG, but usually the go-to is the TIFF that would be inherently lossless to start with, instead of just a JPEG.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay, who else? Any question, you guys? All right. Well, I guess we're gonna stop there. You know, it's about 40 minutes. I think that's great. Thank you so much, you know, Stephen, for taking the time out of your good heart, you know, to come and talk to the students. We really appreciate. And we'll see you next week, you guys. Do you want to stay on, Stephen, for a minute?
Sure.